Everyone. Welcome to the Education Committee meeting, December 6, 2023. The chair will call the meeting to order. With great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain the profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. Nuilam, Aixquel, Aquanasilam Nala Atanaquel, Asiem Nusiaya, Antape Chantal Morve, School Board Trustee. Welcome. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous today. This is my first time chairing as the official chair of the Education Committee, newly elected as of about an hour ago. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone for trusting me in this position as chair of the Education Committee. I take this job very seriously, as you can tell with my nervousness. So I hope I will do a good job for the next year. So we are going to go to number 2, additions or deletions. No, sorry. I'm going to go and say, I want to remind everyone to use the chat. If you would like to be added to the speaker list, or if you would like to make a comment, just put that in the chat and I will try and keep my eye on that. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order to the agenda? Please put it in the chat. Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Leanne, motion to approve, seconded by Mark Robinson. Anybody opposed? Put it in the chat. Seeing none, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. That the minutes of the Education Committee meeting held on November 1st, 2023 be approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 1st, 2023? Mark has moved that. Can I have a seconder? Leanne has seconded that motion. Anyone opposed? Nobody opposed, and that passes. There was no presentations, and we're going to go on to number 8, senior staff reports, and I will pass it off to Mark Walsh and Don Balcombe to start us off with 8.1. Thank you.
Good evening, and I'm just checking whether any of our students are on with us this evening. I do not believe so, but I will give them a second to see if they are there. And if they pop on, I just want to recognize that chair, that we make sure that we give them an opportunity to speak. And so also, of course, the 2 members of the Student Voice trustee members of the Student Voice Committee are here as well, and so maybe would like to add to the report. But just want to take an opportunity to walk through what the report and recommendations coming from the Student Voice Committee are. And then again, Dawn is also here, and Mark is here, and Tanya is here as well to add or to answer any questions. So I'm going to maximize my screen. So if you could just verbally interrupt me, Chair, if there's a question. So you're going to see here, Student Voice Committee is the most efficient committee in the district's history. So it met 3 times to discuss 1, the mandate of the committee and what it was being looked at, and to make sure that the terms of reference were acceptable. 2, to kind of dig into the heart of the matter and what folks, particularly students, would like to see as an effective way to have input, but as well as for the board to have an effective way to can rely on consistent student voice to the board table. And then the third meeting was focusing on the changes and kind of drafting on the fly with respect to what we've come up with as a committee. So as noted in the report, there is the mechanism that exists or that has been in practice with the student voice concept has been functional in being able to provide feedback from the students in an effective way, as well as provide a diverse voice to that particular group. And so there was a commitment that aspect should stick around. But I think the difference, of course, is that a little bit more of a structured connection to the board, and you do that through, of course, through policy and through trustee membership. Of course, trustee, the chair or vice chair has been at those groups often, but what we're proposing is a couple of things. So one is to ensure, again, that this is a board priority, changes to policy 2.5. And so policy 2.5 is the policy that says, NDTA and CUPE and ENSA have room at, or members are without votes at the education and business committees. But here, what's being proposed is a specific addition of student voice, being the student voice circle, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, as a structured group that's going to report back to the board as of right, but also giving the board the ability to kind of ask it questions as well. And of course, we wanted to balance by not forcing, like requiring students that there's not time or desire to come. Of course, it's going to be up to them, whether it's going to be, them reporting, staff supporting them with reports, but we foresee that the leadership opportunity would be students reporting out, taking items to the board as needed, and that's clearly outlined in the recommended changes to policy 2.5, which are present. Additionally, adding additional trustees to make it 3, so the chair and 2 trustees. The intention is not that the chair would have to be there every time, but the option is there. And so I think the concept would be is that at this time of year, the chair would appoint two members to either rotate by meeting or rotate by year. I think that's kind of open based on the ability to everyone get access to that group, because it's a really enlightening group, but it means that there won't be too many adults in the room, but there's also enough voice and trustees at the table for it to have an impact and direct impact beyond just the report back that's going to be coming from the committee. The idea that would have a once a year minimum update to the board. So again, the board's going to be able to not just individual trustees see, but the committee report come back. And of course, that committee report would be done by that committee, what they think is important and what they think needs to be addressed or what was addressed. Now, we also pointed out that we have, as we always seem to have, an administrative procedure that already kind of addresses the idea. But what we've done is we've tweaked it, and we sat there in the last meeting tweaking the AP, as well as to change the name of it to align with what we're looking for. And I just want to point out the Student Voice Circle name was something that we discussed. And the idea, of course, is to make it a little less imposing than a student council, as well as to try to align ourselves to the Say Access framework just a little bit more, both in the physical structure as well as the idea of what it would do. So much more consensus-based concept. Also outlines, the supports available to students, commitment to the diversity of students. So it sends a message to the principals that are helping us, find those students, as well as a couple of other things about what the membership should look like. And then finally, the specific topic idea. So here we have the strategic plan, or maybe it's going to be the budget, or we go to the group. The board could say, well, does the students have a say in some of how we're going to address ND's capacity issues, as an example. And so the board could, as part of their consultation, specifically put something to that group as well. So we'll say very positive, very great suggestions from our partners, as well, obviously, as our students. And I don't know if Don wants to add anything, or Mark, or Tanya, but I think that the changes are relatively self-explanatory. And of course, if it's not functioning in a way, or the board's not getting the voice that it was looking for, there's no, there's nothing that's going to prevent a change to make sure that the committee is functioning the way that it should be functioning.
Don, would you like to add to that?
You know what? I think Mark really summarized the work of the committee up really well. I'll just extend my appreciation to the trustees and students and staff that have been part of that committee. The conversations have been fabulous, and I think this is a very a good policy and good AP going forward. I'm really excited for the work that the students and trustees are going to engage in the coming months. It's going to be good. And happy to answer questions. I apologize, not apologize, I just send the regrets for the students. I know that German and Ava from Wellington are both working, and I know TJ, I think, had intentions to be here, and I'm not sure whether she's working or she's got some other duties that pulled her away from this committee tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Don. I see Tanya has a comment.
Yes, just a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Mark and Don for the report and for your work with the group and everyone who participated in the group. Were really great conversations, and particularly the three students. They just were very engaged and very open and really had lots of really great ideas. And one of the things they stressed was that they didn't want to, as the three students there with other students not yet represented, see the group make any final decisions about things like how often we meet with the board, how often, or how we would do things like how many. Like, one of the things we decided was up to 4 reps, or at least 1 rep per school, so that maybe students could rotate from various schools. Like, maybe somebody had an exam coming up and couldn't make a meeting, but another student could from the same school. And with bigger schools, different ways of getting input from students. So we've got a really good basis here, and I think they're really looking forward to seeing the feedback from the policy. And I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm and energy and real desire to get going with this, and really impressed with how quickly we came together and came up with all this. Mark, anything you want to add? Sorry, Greg, I shouldn't have, or Chantal and Greg, I shouldn't have done that.
It's okay. Any follow-up questions though, Tanya?
No, I like I say, I think that the report captures where we're at. There's still, what I like about the policy in the AP is it's narrow enough that we can work with it, but broad enough that it also gives us some freedom to work with the needs of the group.
Thank you. Greg.
Thank you, Chantal. I just wanted to thank Tanya and Mark for serving on this committee, and staff for supporting this, and as well as our students. This is important work for us as a board to hear from our customers, if you will, our students. Is why we're here in the first place. So I really appreciate and look forward to hopefully going forward with the consultation on the policy. So I'll look forward to speaking in favor of the motion should it be moved.
Thank you, Greg. Any follow-ups? Well, there's just a comment. So is there any other questions or comments? I'd like to say, actually, I do have a question myself, but I'll wait for others to speak first. I see a comment here from Mark. Trustee Robinson, unfortunately, is very sick, so his voice is not so great today. So I'll read out to his comment here. It says, "Thank you, Tanya. I have to say that Tanya has led this group spectacularly. One thing that I hope is on our radar is something that came up regarding student selection process. The students mentioned that not all kids are academically inclined and hoping they have some voice." Very, very good point.
yes, that is definitely on my radar, and that was something we were going to circle back to at our next meeting after we got the feedback from the policy. But it's definitely on people's radar.
Fantastic. And I will read Chris Perrier-Ebely comment. Really excited to see this work coming to the board, student voice in public education. So proud of being part of these discussions and the voices of student representatives at a table full of adults. It takes a lot of courage to do that too. You know, it really helps students feel empowered to bring their concerns forward, and I really appreciate that. If anyone has any other questions or comments they would like to make, I have one. It's actually about the AP 316, and I think I'm gonna direct my question to Mark Walsh. I'm wondering about the procedure in this and how. So I'm reading this as the purpose of having a student voice circle, but I don't see anywhere here in the procedure aspect where trustees kind of come into this. Is that why is that? I'm kind of curious. It says, oh, you know what? I just noticed here at the bottom of page 17, it says additional membership will include appropriate district staff, the board chair, and 2 trustees on a rotating basis. So that's my bad. I read it a little bit too fast, and I didn't see that part. But thank you. I had actually another question about how will the 2 additional trustees be chosen? But I think you kind of answered that, Mark, earlier,
Yeah.
that would be a chair thing.
Yeah, through to chair, I think that to make it that prescriptive for that one specific item would be like the chair appoints membership to the variety of committees, and we would foresee that that would be the same. So, but the one conversation that the board will probably want to have, and I'm not, again, I don't know if it needs to be ensconced in policy or not, is whether it's, you know, 2. Yeah, got 4 years, so is it 2, and then the next year you want to rotate, and the next year you want to rotate? Or if there's 4 meetings, do you want to go 2, and then 2 new trust, and then like, so you're constantly getting that exposure? You know, originally some of the conversation was, well, you know, any trustee should be able to come, but then every trustee is going to want to come, and, you know, 9 adults in a room that are used to talking are going to talk. So, that I think is something that, you know, perhaps is a conversation for trustees just about how the chair will appoint and how, you know, how that will work. I would suspect a yearly appointment, and then you just understand that it would rotate, but we didn't want to make that decision for the board at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Mark. Okay, so anybody else have questions or comments? Tanya would like to make a comment.
Thank you. What Mark just said reminded me of something. And Mark, I think this was the first meeting that I was at, which was November 6th, I think, and you weren't there when we talked about this. There were some great ideas around some actual within the school meetings where, for example, I'm going to pick Wellington because that was where we were when I'm pretty sure when we had the conversation, that the 2 Wellington, say there's 2 Wellington reps, would have a bigger session with any students who wanted to come and share things, which they could then take forward to the student voice circle. And there was talk of having inviting the zone reps to those events as well, so they could at least, so even if they weren't officially on the committee, they would hear things more directly from their own schools. And there was also talk of the students from, say, Wellington might go to their feeder schools and talk to the grade 7 students. And again, trustees could be invited to those kinds of events to give them, to create more opportunities for trustees to hear directly from students. Am I remembering that conversation correctly, Dawn? Do you have any recollection of that?
Yeah, I do remember that conversation, and I know when we were talking about the policy and the AP itself, we were trying to, as you said earlier, be narrow enough that it defines some work for the committee, but also broad enough that it allows for extra work to happen as well. And I know that in addition to this student voice circle, there will be student voice activities happening at school. So that idea where the Wellington might go to their feeder schools or invite students up to have other student voice activities, that will still continue. This policy is not limiting student activity. It just defines this particular group of student circles work. So yeah, all those good things were part of that conversation and will continue to happen.
Great, thank you. Mark Robinson also said Tanya remembers correctly. Great. So we have a motion here that we need to action, and I'm seeing that Tanya would like to move the motion on the recommendation.
Yes, thank you. That the Education Committee recommends that the Board of Education of School District number 68, and I'm a Ladysmith, accept the report of the Ad Hoc Student Voice Committee, and further that the Board of Education receive the draft revised policy 2.5 board committee representation and annual work and circulate as a notice of motion for 30 days utilizing the consultation process as per board governance section 1 2.7 policy development.
And I see that Mark Robinson is seconding that motion. Would you like to motivate the motion, Tanya?
Thank you. I believe that the committee has done very good work. I believe that this is something we know that this is something that our board has been passionate about. And I know that it's been a passion for me and for I think many of us since we started this work. This is the logical next step to get a formal student voice process in place that will allow all trustees a little more access to and students to have direct contact and access to us. So this has been great, good work from the students and the staff and the committee, and it's time to move it forward.
Thank you for that, Tanya. Is there any discussion on the recommendation? Is there, I'm going to now put it to the vote because I don't see anybody, any discussion regarding the recommendation. So anybody opposed to the recommendation? Please put it in the chat. Seeing no one opposed, the recommendation passes. Great, and that will go to the Board of Education meeting. Fantastic. Good stuff. This is really great work, and I'm really excited that this is going forward. We're progressing to get those voices embedded even deeper into the work that the board does. And kudos to everybody for doing this work so quickly too. It's fantastic. I mean, a lot of the student circle voice committee was already kind of there, and it's sort of blooming into something even better. And so I'm really excited to see where this lands. So now we are going to move to 8.2, and I will pass it over to Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. It is a great opportunity for me this evening to be able to report out and share a bit of a snapshot around the board goal of truth and reconciliation. You know, I'll sort of start, this topic off by saying that Indigenous peoples have had a difficult history with education. We've had many years of a broad impact, Indigenous peoples, communities, and the impact has hurt Indigenous communities. And so in our district, we strive to create systems and structures and environments of equity where Indigenous students and families feel a true sense of efficacy and agency. And we are pursuing that through all of the board's goals. This evening, I'll take a little bit of time with Assistant Superintendent Don Balcom to highlight a few pieces and a few elements of how we are doing this work for you this evening. But I just think it's really important to sort of lay that foundation, just to reiterate what we know and feel to be true around the purpose of this goal. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and on and off all sorts of screens this evening. Okay, so one of the first areas I'd like to highlight is by way of our Nutsimot-Tadlet Committee. And as you'll remember, Nutsimot-Tadlet is a joint committee that focuses energies toward professional learning, and it's a committee that has a wide diversity of folks on it, with the sole focus, it's a very united group that comes together around professional learning for all. And so through a lengthy process, we have come out near the other side, and I wanted to just take a real quick moment to show you a snapshot of this work. We're in the middle of this work, it's not complete, but we're all feeling quite proud, and it's taken a good amount of time, and we've got to where we are now in a really good way. And I'd like to show you just a quick snapshot of what we're calling at the moment our CIETSIS principles of teaching and learning. So Indigenous ways of knowing and being are, as you know, multitudinous, and it's important to recognize that they are neither static nor unchanging. Indigenous ways can shift and grow and evolve like other things can, and it's important to know that their ways of being are living and growing like other aspects of our society. So these teaching and learning principles, they speak. We started with the foundation of Indigenous or our ways of knowing and being as we relate to the world. And these concepts or principles come from the land or the territories, of course, that our district resides within. So they are of the land of the Stuminas, the Snuneymuxw, and the Snuneymuxw First Nations. And we've been presented with these concepts or principles as a way of being, and it's essentially Nutsimot-Tadlet's job to take these concepts and ways of being and translate them into principles for teaching and learning. So that's really been our task, and as I said, we're coming out the other side and feeling very excited about the work that we've done so far. So just as a snapshot, I've just brought forward for you a sample of 3 of these principles. We're probably going to, in the end, probably have about 6 or 7. And the language for us was front and center and very important, because the language is able to give us concepts or principles that have deep meaning. It's not sort of one word translated into an English word or vice versa. So as an example, if we look at the first one here, we've got Aitshkwalowin, which directly translated is good heart, good mind, or open heart and open mind. So we come to new learnings, or we come to situations with an open heart and an open mind. And it also speaks to coming to situations or approaches where with both our heart and our mind. It's very, in our Western mindset, we often come to situations with just our minds, right? It's an intellectual pursuit, if you will. And if the next one is Tamach, or Shiat Tamach, which speaks to the land or the sacred land. And of course, we, our Indigenous peoples have a vital connection to the land. It carries the teachings of the ancestors. Humans have a very special kinship to the land. We have reciprocal obligations to one another. And the land is our first teacher. So that's the concept, or a shortened version of the concept behind this idea of land and our sacred land. Next, we've got Shkwalakwa, which speaks to an interconnectedness. that we're all related, we are all one family, and that this refers to relationships that humans have with one another for sure, but as equally as important is the relationship between humans and the natural world. And it speaks to relatives, including one another, and more than just the human world, it speaks to balance and harmony. And so we've learned about these concepts, these principles as ways of being. And as I said, it'll be Nuts Mutt Tudlut's job to turn those into, or try to understand or translate, if you will, how these ways of being, what they might mean for us in classrooms. So for example, if we think about Aich Kwalawan being good heart and good mind, this concept takes us towards ideas of teaching and learning that can be multimodal, for example, that teaching and learning can include like a mental engagement, a physical engagement, emotional engagement. It could also speak to multiple intelligences, whether we learn through pictures or music or social interactions or introspection, that those are all valuable, of equal value, and that they give learners a multitude of ways into the learning concepts, rather than just say a single intelligence that we might be used to, sort of in the form of like an IQ, right? So that's an example of how we'll begin to translate concepts of ways of being into the classroom. Okay. Next, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a quick moment. I know this is a lot of information. I'll pause at the end. So next, I'd like to share with you that we have our fourth and last season, our year of around our learning NCI. It's a speaker series. And this is a speaker series that has been central to the district for a number of years, and it has had a variety of speakers on a variety of topics, from histories to pedagogies to self-determination, treaty lands, etc. And we're kicking off this final season with a very special speaker, Umik, Dr. Richard Atleo, and that kickoff is going to be filmed live for us from Wildwood. So those will be, again, a series of speakers that will occur throughout this school year, and it'll be our fourth and final season. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to continue our updates.
Thank you so much, Laura. Just listening and reflecting as you were going over that material, just how interconnected all of the work that we do. And so even though I'm picking up a piece from Laura, all of the work is connected, and so that iSqualapan is super. It is where the work is. So I was super excited. And the speaker series. Did you say it was the fourth? Is it the fourth year we've been doing this, Laura? It's amazing. They're so good, and they're archived if you want to go back and listen to ones previously. One of the other things that we're doing this year is we're going through a project on transformative reconciliation. And last year, during our curriculum implementation day, district-wide, we had all of our teachers during the May curriculum implementation day get to spend the day with Dr. Dustin Louie. And Dustin Louie is the director of the Indigenous Education Teacher Program at UBC, and he's a super engaging researcher. He is very provocative, yet supportive at the same way. So if you can imagine, as a non-Indigenous person being able to be in an uncomfortable place that feels comforting at the same time, that's how I describe time with Dr. Dustin Louie. So we're super excited that we've engaged his wisdom this year. And we're having him do work with our secondary principals and vice principals, as well as sessions with our secondary learning leaders. So each of our schools have a table of learning leaders, from anywhere from about 3 learning leaders up to a table of about 10 or 12. So it's a large group when we get together with all of our learning leaders and our our secondary principals, vice principals, our district learning coordinators, some of our district staff and elementary principals that are part of a TELP group that's heading off to do a presentation. So they're doing some collaborative work together. So there's a large group, close to 100 of us, that are meeting 6 times this year with Dustin Louie. And then our principals, secondary principals, vice principals meet with him the following morning for a half day as well. So we've had a couple sessions already. We have another one coming up on December the 12th with our secondary principals, vice principals. Super engaging work. It ties in very well with the work that Laura was speaking to around our CETSIS work and the and our CETSIS principles of learning. So everything's connected. It's fitting together so well. We're super excited for the work, and we know that this is just part of the journey. And the next year there'll be some further engagement, whether it's with Dustin Louie himself or whether it's along the lines of continuing the work. So we're excited for that. The other piece that's a connected piece is we've had our CETSIS dinner gatherings, and our CETSIS dinner gatherings is with our beloved CETSIS family and our knowledge keepers. And we've had sessions with, in previous years, with district staff. We've had sessions with all of our principals and vice principals have had CETSIS dinner gatherings and have had those teachings and learning opportunities. Last year, we also had sessions with our teachers who are teaching our English First Peoples Indigenous Graduation Requirement course. And this year, we're excited to offer our secondary learning leaders, the same teachers who are going through the sessions with Dr. Louie, to also experience those teachings with our knowledge keepers during our CETSIS dinner gathering. So we're excited for that to continue as our learning and our journey together. And the last piece for our presentation, I'm going to turn it back to Laura, who's going to talk about an amendment to Bill 40, which is just one more piece in this journey for us. I'll turn it back to Laura.
Thank you, Don. Just to, for a moment, continue the theme of learning, I just want to point out that we have a very robust website, NLPS Learns, as a reminder. And I've just got on screen here our Indigenous learning page that has all sorts of resources to peruse and to be supportive to educators in the system. Lots of Halkomunim resources, videos and story resources. In addition to that, the BC Ministries webpage or website, sorry, for curriculum and curriculum support resources is quite rich as well. You can see here it's got all sorts of resources. There's probably about 16 pages here with a multitude of links on a multitude of subjects as well. On both sites, the NLPS site and the Ministry site, of course, the Indigenous learning content, perspectives, etc., is woven throughout all the areas of the curriculum. Just to highlight that this work is rich, but at times can be very challenging, and it's very important for us to support and guide all learners, both adults and children, as we progress through this journey together. So as Don mentioned, I'll just give you a real quick highlight. There, as you know, and regarding the School Act and Bill 40, there have been a few, or there's to be coming a few changes in Bill 40. So if we start with it outlines or highlights the purpose of Indigenous Education Councils. Essentially, they want to ensure that districts have one, and we've had it ours for decades. And these councils, of course, provide input into decisions affecting Indigenous students. It also speaks to, but I will say we've also been doing this for decades, where the councils, the input, of course, is to be across, many decisions that affect all students, not just to students with Indigenous ancestry. So our Indigenous Education Leadership Council is called Leaders for Learning. And as I said, it's been in place and working and robust for decades. And they advise and collaborate around all aspects of learning, Indigenous learning, and budget. And on this committee sit our, of course, representatives from our 3 land-based nations, as well as Mid-Island Métis Nation and Tilikum-Lalem Aboriginal Friendship Center. So more language is being put into Bill 40 around Indigenous education councils. The next piece is this idea of the First Nations School of Choice. And so this will support nations, whether they be on reserve students or self-governing nation lands or treaty lands, that those nations can delegate or choose a school of their choice, that the students that on their reserve lands, living on reserve, will have free access to. And of course, we've been working with our nations for years on meeting their needs in this regard for a long time. So this Bill 40 for us would be maybe formalizing that in consultation with our nations. And then it speaks to also these model local education agreements. So just as a reminder and a summary, that local education agreements, or LEAs, pertain to First Nation students who live on reserve or on self-governing nation lands or treaty lands. It governs basically the purchase of education programs to the end of improving First Nations student achievement. And this is done by developing relationships between First Nations and the board, and it sets out processes for information sharing, collaboration, decision-making, etc. And LEAs essentially attempt to address systemic barriers that result in inequitable or have been resulting in inequitable outcomes for students in the K-12 system. So that Bill 40 speaks to the ability for nations to just not have an LEA at all. That's their choice. They can continue with their existing LEA. They can negotiate a customized or custom LEA, or they can apply this new model LEA. And that model LEA, or template, if you will, has not been developed yet. And that's something that will be co-developed with, as Bill 40, this information has been all along, with the First Nations Education Steering Committee and the Ministry of Education and Childcare. And the goal of this model LEA, or this template, of course, is to establish sort of minimum standards for an effective LEA. So more to come on that as time continues and as their collaboration continues. So I will end us there and return it back to the chair, and both Dawn and I are here if there are questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Laura and Dawn.
You're so welcome.
I'll say some things after. So I'm going to give it over to Tanya, let her speak first. If anyone has any questions or comments, please put it in the chat and I'll put you on the speakers list.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was absolutely terrific. It's great to see all the amazing things that we've been doing, and it's good to have a bit of an understanding of these new acts that are coming in place, so that we know that we're on top of everything. I was just wondering, could you go please back to the website and show me where, because I always get lost, and I know if I get a lot of us get lost, it's where we can find the speaker series if we want to go back and watch episodes we've missed, or just watch a few of them again. It's on that page, isn't it? That page you first showed us?
No, I can't do that for you because I can't really find it really at the minute. But if you're asking other questions, I'll go dive in and look for it.
Okay, now fair enough. But
Is
it on the SD68 Learns page?
It's not on the Learns, it's on our SD68 website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's probably why I have trouble finding it sometimes, is I go to the wrong place. Yeah.
If I find it while we're chatting, I will stick it on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
That would be great. I also think it's on YouTube too. I think if you go to YouTube, I think you might be able to like just Google CETSIS and it might pop up. I think I did that once. And I found it there, but I could be wrong. Naomi, you have a question.
Hi. I guess my question is around the information sheet we were given. From the Director of Instruction, Indigenous Learning.
Yes.
I was just wondering if Ricky is available, if she could maybe just outline, I know she broke it down into operational plan objectives and then strategies. And I was just wondering if maybe if Ricky is able to just elaborate a little bit on the fostering opportunities for school communities to learn about the local land, language, and culture, like maybe just expand on like how we've done that.
Ricky's not here with us.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, which is
Sorry
why
about
Dawn and
that.
I are. No, it's all good. But I can certainly take that away and get a bit more information on that for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. From 0 for 2 so far.
Laura, I just put in, I know if you type in TRC 57 speaker series, that's always how I get to it, and it takes you right to the TRC 57 speaker series page, and it's got the learning with CETSIS, all of the speaker series and all the information there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry, did you have any follow-up questions, Naomi?
Thank you. No, I don't.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I don't think I asked Tanya if she had any follow-up questions.
No follow-up, thank you. And Laura, you're doing fantastic.
Okay, and I'm just popping the link into the chat there.
It's fantastic. So it is, let's see, www.trc57speakerseries.ca. So if anybody'd like to take a look, everybody should go take a look. It's fantastic. Lots of good learning there. Is there anybody else that has any comments or questions? You could pop up on screen too if you'd like, or you could put it in the chat. Trying to leave people some space to talk first because I'm usually the first person to ask the questions. And so in this new role, I'm going to step back a little bit and listen more. Greg, you have a question.
Straight from my camera. There we go. Yeah, thank you, Chantel, through to staff. I don't know if this is a super good question or if there would be an answer. I'm just really happy in the work that we have been doing in this area. And it makes me wonder, what's the next step? Because this isn't work where there's a beginning and an end. So I'm curious. It's more of an inquiry around what the vision or idea for the future might look like, and
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I will take the first approach at it, but I'm happy to have others chip in. I would probably suggest that when Dawn was speaking about transformative reconciliation, and we've, with the board have spoken on multiple occasions about JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, we are trying to grow the understanding around both of those concepts, but also bringing them, sort of more closely together and weaving them into sort of one understanding. When we think about what the future holds, we are looking at, providing equity for all students to access the learning that suits them. And you can take that and you can roll that into any of our demographics. And essentially, when we think about our Indigenous students, our First Nations students, particularly First Nations students on reserve, who face some of the largest systemic barriers, we are looking for them to be able to learn the way that they learn best. And that sounds simple, but that's what equity is. But it is a massive piece. And I still think that we are trying to learn how to provide learning opportunities that will provide equity, access, and success for all of the students in a class. As you know, diversity is broad and it's beautiful. It provides beautiful opportunity with some challenges in a classroom, and we are learning to wrap our minds around that. We are learning to get better at that. But I would suggest that notion essentially is what's good for Indigenous students is good for all students, and that's what the future holds. But I would also say that some of the things that we have been talking about for decades and are certain in some circles, quite clear about some of these things. What I'm learning now that I've been around a little while is we need to continue to move forward, but we have to keep circling back and picking everybody up and continuing to move forward and circling back and picking everyone up and taking everybody on the journey. It's not a linear journey. It's linear and cyclical and reciprocal. And for me, there's still lots of learning and lots of learning to lead this work. I've been in the work, I've lived the work. Leading the work presents and provides beautiful learning opportunities for me and for the team. But I'll pause and I'll ask Dawn to add to that if you choose.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, what the next step is it is a great question, Greg, and there is no kind of beginning and there is no end to this. There is a journey, and as Laura said, it's not linear. It's messy in all the good ways. And I think one of my observations about kind of that shared ownership, and Laura's spoken a lot about this, right? That it's on everybody to own Indigenous education. It's not something that we ask our Indigenous staff to do, although they do lead in a beautiful way. For me, one of the pieces that I love Laura's image of circling back and picking people up and moving forward and constantly circling back is that people are receiving, the lessons and the wisdom when they're ready to receive it, and everyone's at a different place on that. But I'm witnessing a lot of what I refer to as virtuous cycles. Somebody says, hey, I want to learn something, and they learn just a little bit, and then it just sparks an interest in learning more, and then they want to learn more, and then they want to unlearn something, and then they want to learn something, and they want to unlearn, and they just get in a bit of a place where they take ownership of their own learning. And some of those spirals kind of collect their colleagues along the way too. It's like, what are you so excited about? You're like, I'm learning something that really is helping, an Indigenous learner, or helping me connect with an Indigenous family. And as Laura said, and it's working for all of my students and all of our learners. And they kind of go through those spirals. So for me, the next steps is not so much on, like defining what the next step is. It's more of a feeling that people are engaging in the work. And we're in a good place, and I've a year from now, I think you'll be asking the same question, which will be, where are we going next? And it'll be a different answer, but I think some of it will be the same. We're on a really good journey.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank
Greg,
you.
do you have any follow-up questions or comments?
Not really. Maybe I'll just say thank you. I think I would just say I look forward to, as an overseer of our system, looking at the data and the evidence that suggests that we're moving in the right direction. So, and that'll be over to you, Laura, I suppose, and staff, and through you to try and put the right pieces in place and strategies that are going to result in success for our students, and you do that all the time. So I look forward to seeing what this year brings. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Boretsky says, I love this. Thank you so much. Leanne, you would like to make a comment?
Hi, good evening. I just want to say I really love what you said about what's good for Indigenous students is good for all students. And I'll take that a little bit further to say what is good for Indigenous people is good for all people. I think that when we acknowledge that we're all in a different place and we all have learnings to do, I think that's very powerful. And I personally can see with children in the system that we have some great educators in our buildings, and they are doing the work, and our children are receptive to this and they're excited about it and they're learning. And I know my student is coming home and talking to me, so you know, that's great. So I just want to say thank you so much for the work that's being put in, because it is coming home. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne and Greg, Tanya, and everybody. You kind of all sort of said kind of what I wanted to say as well. And I'm incredibly heartened to see such deep commitment, you know, from Scott, our superintendent, to our deputy superintendent, Laura Tate, to our assistant superintendents, Don and Jackie, to literally everybody else across the board, our educators, our staff, who are trying to walk alongside and learn and grow, and deeply committed to doing this work. It's a really good feeling, and but it's hard work, and it can be uncomfortable sometimes, as you said, Don. You know, we'll get it wrong. Some of us will get it wrong, but it's okay that we're uncomfortable and we make mistakes, but we learn and we have to move on and we have to learn. This is the work that has to happen for us to have an actually equitable education system, and leaving that old system in the past and grow with a new one. And I really appreciate all of your hard work, every single one of you who is doing this. It's the important work that needs to happen. And I'm glad Greg asked about what the next steps were, because that's a really great question. And I'm so excited to hear that and how it's cyclical in nature. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just such a great way of explaining that. Thank you for that. And thank you for being such great leaders in this work. Representation matters, and our diversity is our strength. And that's what makes us stronger and better and more accessible for everybody. Is there any more comments or questions? This has been such a great presentation. I almost don't want it to end here. I want to learn more. What else can you teach us tonight?
Yeah.
But thank you. Actually, I learned a few new phrases and some new learnings, some new thoughts in regards to that. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to be going back into the learning series as well and looking at some of the videos and things like that to learn some more. So I encourage everybody to do the same when they have the time. Holidays are coming up, so yeah. Thank you very much, Laura and Don, and everybody else who's been involved in this critical work. I had the utmost pleasure and privilege. Super grateful to be sitting next to Dr. Louis when he was here, and I got to, you know, pick his ear for a little bit and ask him some questions. And oh gosh,
Right.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
fantastic. So I'm so glad he's working with us. I'm just delighted. This is fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody. I think we are coming to the end here now. Let's see, correspondence. So we're going to move on to number 9. Correspondence referred from the regular board meeting. There is none. Great, Laura, you've added that into the chat. That's fantastic. Is there any unfinished business? None. There is number 11, new business. There is no new business. And question period number 12, no questions. You have answered all the questions, Laura. Good job. Thank you very much. And number 13, a motion to adjourn, please. Mark Robinson has a motion to adjourn. Do I have a seconder? Leanne is seconding that motion. Anybody opposed? Okay, none opposed. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, listening to this great update. Really appreciate it.